Hello and welcome to In No Particular Order. I'm Matt, and today I'm joined by Tyson, Michael, and David.
Hello.
Hey,
So this is our In No Particular Order is our game dev podcast where we talk everything game dev all over the place. So today we're talking about storytelling in video games. So for those who may not know, our first published game was Halen Ballad of the Blade Thief, which is a first-person action platformer with a very, very heavy narrative. Whereas our second game is the Blobs fight, which has no story whatsoever. So we have
at
some
least not an overt story.
exactly, yeah. So we have experience making both narrative and non-narrative stories, but we also have experience playing narrative stories. So I guess our first question, would be one that's very important for storytelling is who's your favorite video game character?
It's a tricky question.
Halen.
Hey,
Bam!
unbiased.
Bam!
Dropping some hard truths here, game industry.
That's a tough question, but
Okay,
I think for
maybe
me,
not your number one, but one of them.
What's he about to say? Yeah, for Michael.
just because the games cover so much of his story, I really like Nathan Drake. I'm a huge Indiana Jones fan, so I've always been a fan of him. But really, I didn't care as much about him until the fourth game. If anyone's played the fourth or Uncharted game, it covers like three important parts of his life, I guess.
I still need to play that.
It's so you just connect so much more with the character in that fourth game that it made him my favorite character. Despite me always liking him, he wasn't my favorite, but yeah, definitely with Uncharted 4, it like shot him into the stratosphere for me.
Oh, okay. Does it those aspects of the fourth game, does it tie back to the first three, that in the way that it explains some of his decisions or the way he is in those past games?
Absolutely, yeah, it really does. Yeah.
So have you replayed those games since playing number 4?
No, I haven't. I was waiting for those kind of HD re-releases, but I just never got around to playing them. I think Tyson, you have them, don't they? Don't you?
Yeah, I played them all in order because I never played Uncharted when they first came out.
Yeah, I
And
played them
then
all when they came out.
I got the Nathan Drake collection and marathon through all of them, and then played A Thief's End, and
Oh,
it was really good.
It'd be
yeah.
really interesting.
You probably got sick of climbing after by the end of it, but
It'd be interesting, Michael, to hear your take, and Tyson yourself as well. Your take on the character as you're playing through 1, 2, 3 with everything that you know that's about to be revealed or whatever. It'd be interesting to see like your first
Right.
playthrough versus a replay.
well, the thing about the Uncharted games is each successive game, it doesn't pull. They're their own adventures. They're kind of their own standalone stories. They're not building to anything.
Oh, okay.
So, because it's inspired by Indiana Jones, where each Indiana Jones movie is its own standalone story, but certain aspects of the character grow with each movie. But as far as like, oh, cliffhanger, what's going to happen next time? That's not a thing. So,
Yeah,
Uncharted.
Okay.
What the reason Uncharted 4 is so good for me is because it tells my favorite story of Nathan Drake. But it doesn't like improve the previous games in a huge way, just because it's not like a continuing story. It's not like the Avengers movies that build to this big
Right.
thing. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Or like Star Wars, the original trilogy, or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Tyson or David, favorite character or one of?
It's tricky because a lot of the characters like I think about are characters that aren't necessarily like great characters in like a narrative sense, right? They're not like, they wouldn't necessarily make great main characters in like a movie or a TV show or like a book or anything like that. What I like about them is
What are some examples?
okay, so the biggest example that sticks out of my mind is Samus from the Metroid series. Mostly I'm talking about, I mean, yeah, the 3D ones too. Actually, I guess all of them really. Maybe not another M.
Yeah.
A game no one should play.
Doesn't that one
anyway,
have the most story? Doesn't it have like cutscenes and stuff?
it does. Anyways, no, what I like about Samus as a character is that everything you know about her, like oh, like the beginning is like a little like, oh yes, I was sent to go do this, whatever. Like that's completely irrelevant. Like what you get of Samus as a character is you're playing her just going down into these dangerous alien worlds full of monsters and just horrific things and stuff. But it's not a horror game. It's like a, an action platformer because you're just like bravely going through, you're exploring, you're finding things. For example, like the backstory is that like Ridley, the big pterodactyl, fire-breathing pterodactyl, is the one who killed Samus's parents and like killed all her like the people who like the colonists of the planet where she used to live or whatever. And when you find Ridley, you don't like, oh no, I'm scared. No, you just shoot a ton of missiles in his face. Because Samus is like, it's like focused and determined and doesn't let anything hold her back or stop her.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just going down to these planets completely alone to like single-handedly take out some galactic threat now and again. Like alone with basically minimal equipment and just goes in. And obviously that's like, if you think about that as a story, like obviously like that's a common like video game thing, right? Oh yes, you're the sole protagonist, but like Metroid was one of the first games of that, and it's continued being the same. But like that idea of, I don't know, I think that's like that's the thing, right? Is that some games you are controlling a character, like in Uncharted, Nathan Drake, like you're not Nathan Drake. You're controlling him and he's having his own story. But some games, like Halo or Skyrim or Metroid, you are embodying this character, right? You are
Yeah.
in a different way. Like you are making, you know what I mean?
Yes,
Yeah.
you're immersing yourself in that character and putting your mark on the world, as opposed to Nathan Drake, which is a straight cut story.
It's more
of
like you're
someone
acting
else.
as Nathan. You're acting out scenes.
Mhm.
And that happens to me a lot when I'm playing certain games. Is when I'm playing Uncharted uh, or like Red Dead or something like that, where I'm playing a specific character, and they like have talking lines, and there's certain things that they need to do. I find myself playing in a more like I'm trying to be perfectionist. I'm trying to do things the way I think that character would act.
Mm.
Whereas when I'm playing like Skyrim or Halo or something like that, and a game where you kind of are that character a bit more, I act how I would act. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At least that's how I play. Like I know a lot of people are like they jump into GTA and they just wreak havoc. But for me, when I was playing GTA 5, who has like 3 separate characters, each character I would play them based on how I think their characters would act in that situation. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, for sure. That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Tyson?
So, characters are hard for me because there's so many characters that I've played that I enjoy. So one of the characters that I found most entertaining, I guess, as a player is Atreus in the God of War reboot. Mostly because he's a character that he's your son. So he embodies a lot of what I assume are fatherly emotions, I guess is the way to put it, where sometimes you can be really proud of your son, and sometimes he can really piss you off, and sometimes he can just be a massive disappointment. And you kind of experience all those emotions through Kratos's eyes. But the thing that really stuck out to me was how they managed to fluctuate Atreus's character between being like a really fun, useful, kind of helpful character to, oh my god, will you please shut the fuck up? I don't care. And then going back to, oh, this is a really cool character, and then going back to shut the hell up, I don't care. Just in how his personality develops through the game. So like that's definitely one of the most interesting characters for me, at least as like on a player level. On a story level, though, my favorite character in any game is Kreia from Knights of the Old Republic 2. And I would even say like that's definitely my favorite Star Wars character, without a doubt. And Knights of the Old Republic 2 is one of my favorite, actually my favorite Star Wars story. Kreia is an interesting Star Wars character because when I watched the Star Wars movies, there was a very clear defined line between good and bad, right? Like Luke is good, Darth Vader is bad, but then kind of turns good. The Emperor is just straight bad. So, there's a very clear defined line, at least in the original trilogy, and maybe not so much in the prequels, but, it's still kind of there. Knights of the Old Republic 2 says, you know what? Fuck the line. It's stupid. It's dumb. Get rid of it. Here's some gray Jedi, to give you the idea of maybe there's like, a balance, which is how they introduce Kreia, of course, where she's teaching you certain things that can happen from either good actions or bad actions. One of the situations that sticks out to me in my mind all the time is when you first land on Nar Shaddaa. There's as soon as you land, there's a beggar that comes up and asks you for money. And if you give him money, Kreia criticizes you for giving him money, because what will happen is you see the character with the money like run away really happily and then get robbed by another poor person because he has money, right? And Kreia's like, just being the generous person isn't always the right thing to do. On the other hand, if you're playing as a dark side character and you don't give the person money, that person then goes and robs somebody else with money and gets killed.
Oh my god.
So
no matter what you do.
Again, you get criticized by Kreia for doing the wrong thing.
Okay.
So that's the thing that really intrigued me about Kreia's character, is that there's no right way to handle that situation for her. And I'll explain more about that later on in the podcast when we talk about our favorite story, because there's a whole reason behind that for her character that I'm going to delve into later. I could talk about Kreia and Knights of the Old Republic 2 for fucking hours. It's my favorite thing.
All right. Well, I mean, that's there we go. Next question is exactly that. What is your favorite story in a game? Anyone want to start?
We better start with Tyson, because I think he's already got his answer.
He does seem pretty antsy about it.
Smoothly transition here.
So I don't think any of you have played Knights of the Old Republic 2, right?
No.
No, I don't know why. I really honestly don't know why I never played those games. I think I just missed the boat, and they've been too daunting for me to get into. I tried getting into the first one, but then I got distracted with Red Dead.
Here's the thing. Knights of the Republic 1, in my opinion, has a weaker story. At least a lot of the elements of the plot are kind of predictable. And, I mean, it's still a good game. It's just Knights of the Republic 2 has...
Everything I've heard, everyone's always said Knights of the Republic 1 is the better one.
I disagree with that.
Because it's
gameplay-wise,
it was a finished game.
Yeah,
I heard that KOTOR 2 it was like rushed.
Yes. KOTOR 2 was definitely rushed, but the story is substantially better, even if it was a rushed game, which is really surprising, honestly. So the basic idea, I'm gonna spoil it because you kind of have to explain.
No.
Spoiler alert
to
anyone who hasn't played it.
Are you actually? Oh my god, you did. Okay.
Basically, the way the way the story plays out is this lady Kreia you meet at the start of the game. You find out that she's force sensitive, and then you find out through her that you are also force sensitive. And you kind of go around and you explore, and if you go light side, you learn things from Kreia's perspective about the light side, and if you go dark side, you learn things from Kreia's perspective about the dark side. Because surprise, fucker, she's done both of them. She's been both a Jedi Master and a Sith Lord, and she kind of gives you the experiences from both sides of the equation, which is really interesting because you find a character that's a Sith Lord that you don't immediately despise because she was a Sith Lord. She explains that to understand the Force fully, you have to understand both sides of it.
Sounds a little bit like Qui-Gon.
A little bit, yeah. Qui-Gon was definitely, a more of a neutral kind of Jedi. The interesting part happens when you get to a certain point near the end of the game, where if you are on the light side, the mission of the game is to go to specific planets and find Jedi members from the Council and bring them back to Dantooine. Mm-hmm. If you play as a dark side character, your mission is to kill all the Jedi Masters.
Oh.
And then go back to Dantooine. So, if you go light side, you get interrogated by the Jedi Council, and they tell you all about the origin of your character, and then they try to strip you of your connection to the Force because of a very important aspect of your character.
Huh.
And then Kreia jumps in and intervenes and kills all of the Jedi Council. If you're dark side, you go to the council chambers and find that there's no one there because you've killed them all. And she explains to you how, she explains the same sort of important plot detail about your character that you would learn as a light side person, but, from a dark side perspective. And then she basically, in either case, she explains how the Force is a terrible thing because you learn that she hates the Force because she hates the idea of having a predetermined destiny for everybody. She wants to live in a world where, you aren't born and then, you're Force sensitive and the Force kind of controls what you do, right? You may have some say, you think, but really the Force is implementing these, it's forcing these decisions on you, and it's controlling how you act and how you behave. So she wants to use your character to kill the Force, which is the coolest Star Wars concept. It's hard to explain without actually having played the full game.
Huh.
But basically, that's why it's one of my favorite Star Wars stories. Is it brings this whole new concept of, maybe the Force isn't that great a thing. It kind of forces people to live their lives in specific ways.
So it makes you think. Then that's why you like it, because it makes you it changes your perspective of the actual of what you've been told through the movies, and you have to actually think for yourself.
Exactly. It gives you the sort of idea of independence, I guess, would be the main motifs. Yeah. So that's all I'm going to say about the story. So Michael can come back.
Yeah, there he is.
I survived.
You did.
But yeah, that's really my favorite Star Wars story for sure because of
that,
the way it plays out.
Cool. Favorite story?
I really enjoyed Mass Effect 2. The way it all kind of came together. When you kind of connecting individually with each of these characters in in a deep way, and then bringing them into this final battle where they all get killed off was very effective. And then I never finished Mass Effect 3, and I never played Mass Effect 1, so Mass Effect 2 was kind of its own thing for me. No, I didn't have an Xbox 360 when it came out.
I've played. I think the only Mass Effect game I've played more than once is Mass Effect 1.
Have you played 3?
I more than once. I've played all of them. I haven't played 3 more than once.
Okay.
I really like Mass Effect 1. It's not my favorite video game story, but I do enjoy it. I mean, it is kind of, in a way, like a classic story, quote unquote. Like it's not like there's
Yeah.
too many big surprises, but it's just I don't know. I just enjoy it.
It's an epic sci-fi adventure.
Yeah, it's
They
an
do a
epic
really good
sci-fi
job.
adventure.
And you feel like you're controlling it to a certain extent, you
Yeah.
know?
I think that my favorite story in a video game, also my favorite video game is Chrono Trigger.
Hmm.
Um,
You
and
control time or something, right?
not really at all. It's
Okay.
okay.
I know very little, if anything, about it.
Briefly, Chrono Trigger, yes, is a game about time travel. Big surprise. But it's like you play these characters in, I guess you could say, sort of like typical like Japanese RPG characters, like fantasy Japanese RPG characters. And then it's like, oh wait, time travel. So there's different eras that you end up kind of bouncing between in this big adventure that basically you're like this big story. You're figuring out what's going on across different time periods. And you end up going to slowly figure out what the heck is going on
Hmm.
because you're like traveling back and forth through time. So you end up in there's the year 1000, not related to our real lifetime, but there's the year 1000, which is like kind of like it's like, medieval-ish, but I guess slightly more futuristic because they have like, mechanical stuff and guns and stuff.
So more steampunk,
Maybe
maybe?
a little more steampunk. No steam though.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, kind of like. And then there's the year 600, which is like the Middle Ages, knights and monsters and stuff like that. And then there's the post-apocalyptic future, which is like full of robots and destroyed cities. And you're trying to figure out like what caused this apocalypse and how you can stop it. And you end up going back to like prehistory, like like millions of years ago, whatever, when like humans were just like primitive cave people and stuff, and like when all of this stuff started in terms of whenever all of the main plotline thread stuff got started. But the most interesting time period is like the year like minus 1200 or minus 12,000, like 12,000 B. Well, they say BC, but it's not. Obviously, it's whatever. Where it's like this super high tech advanced civilization living
Whoa.
on these floating islands above like an ice age planet, or like the world's in an ice age,
Hmm.
but like there's this advanced
There's a precursor
civilization.
civilization from before the Ice Age?
Well, no, like it's unclear, but
Or are there aliens?
no, they're not aliens. I feel like to say more would be to give away that. Well, no, okay. So the whole thing is, anyways, it's really good, and it's full of great characters, great memorable characters like a frog who is a knight. Well, he's a knight who got turned into a frog. And you've got a robot from the post-apocalyptic future, and you've got like a cave woman. So it's fun.
Huh.
That's cool.
And it's actually like just like a genuinely like got a lot of heartfelt kind of, despite like its crazy like premise. It's got a lot of heartfelt moments and.
Mm-hmm. But it's all like just like text based, right?
No. It's like a Super Nintendo.
Sorry, what I meant was there's
Oh
no
yeah, there's
voice
no
acting or anything.
voice, no
Yeah.
audio.
Subtitles.
Yeah,
Okay. Have to check it out.
I think you should.
Okay. So let's. So we've covered favorite video game characters, favorite stories. So
Well, I kind of said I like Mass Effect. I think
Okay.
one of my favorite stories is my favorite. It's not my favorite story. I don't have a favorite story, but my favorite weird story games is Spec Ops: The Line.
Okay. What is that?
Has anyone played that?
I've heard about it.
Spec Ops: The Line is a game where you're these like U.S. Marines, and you get dropped off in Dubai where there's been like a massive sandstorm that's basically destroyed the city. and you basically go around trying to figure out what happened, try to save. You're there to save people, but you end up getting pulled into like these like there's like all these different armies there. They've gone rogue, and like there's like these U.S. Army guys who have kind of gone rogue and start looting the city and kind of starting up their own kind of thing, and you get into this like super morally gray areas in order to survive and like defeat the bad guys, but it ends up that you're kind of the bad guy in the end, and it's very like political. It's a very political kind of gray kind of like sad story that you don't expect to see from a video game, especially. And it's kind of it comes out of that time where we were getting lots of those kind of like modern military shooters,
Right.
but it's like a
It's like a refutation of all of that.
yeah, it's kind of parodying it in a way, but like in a more serious way. What's like a serious parody, like
A critique.
a critique? Yeah, it's critiquing those kinds of games, and yeah, and it's very good, very good. I recommend it to anyone that wants an interesting story game built into just your typical third person cover shooter.
Okay. Huh. All right. Those are quite the variety of games there, or stories anyway.
There's a very big variety of games of stories that can be told in video games.
That's right. So, with video game characters and stories and the whole variety, clearly there's reasons why you like those characters or those stories. So personally, what do you think a video game needs to have a good story, or what makes a good story in video games? Because between writing a book or making a story for a video game, the story might be the same, but they might also be different, and because of the different mediums, the story might change because of it. So are there thoughts on that?
I got something. I think one of the most important things to a video game story is the beginning of it. Speaking from personal, like the games that I've liked versus the games that I maybe haven't liked. If I'm not invested in your story in the first hour or two, I'm not going to finish the game. That's just how it's going to be. Like one of the big things for me is Far Cry, where I played the first Far Cry game I played was Far Cry 4. And I really really enjoyed it. I got really into it. The story was pretty cool. The gameplay was nice. So, I pretty much 100%ed that. And then I was like, oh, I should play the other Far Cry game. And I loaded up Far Cry 1 and realized that it was pretty much the same story. I was like, well, I've already played this. So I stopped playing that, and then I played Far Cry 2 and played that for like an hour, and I was like, oh, this is pretty much the same story too. It's the same sort of formula. And that really put me off. And then, Far Cry 5 came out, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll give it a chance. And the same damn thing happened where, it's the same kind of predictable plot line that they just keep recycling, and I don't know why.
Wait, you never played Far Cry 3, the most famous one?
I don't think I have, no. Or if Far Cry 3 is the one with the what's his name?
I don't remember the guy's name, but that's like the most famous Far Cry game is Far Cry 3.
I think I know who you're talking about. I have not played that. I kind of want to play Blood Dragon because I feel like that seems like an interesting, different kind of concept. It's just a matter of picking up the will to play another Far Cry game.
Okay, so the first hour or so.
Yeah, basically, your story has to be engaging to me early on, because if there's no reason for me to want to continue the story, then why would I want to keep playing the game, right?
Fair enough.
That's why stories are so important to games. To certain games, is that it pushes you forward through like longer kind of games, because I feel like I get sick of games that are. I've never been a huge fan of like just your simple arcade kind of game. I do enjoy arcade games, but as far as like playing them for hours and hours and hours, eventually you kind of like, okay, I get it. But a story can push you through repetition sometimes.
Yeah, it can like really motivate you to like, how is this going to conclude?
Yeah, a good story has pushed me through bad games, games that aren't fun.
Fair
But
enough. Yeah.
I care about the story and I care about the characters so much that I need to see how it concludes, that kind of thing.
Can I chime in with one really quick? I just thought of a good example. Michael said, a really good example of that for me was The Division,
Okay.
where The Division was the kind of game where you had different areas and it was pretty much the same shit in different areas over and over and over again, the same sort of side missions. But the thing that carried me through it was the story. It was a really interesting story for me. It was like learning about how this whole smallpox epidemic started and who started it and why. Learning, all the stuff about that. That's what drew me through the rest of the game, and what drew me towards getting all the collectibles, because most of the collectibles were like backstory. So that's what really pushed me through that game. And then of course you get to the end game, the Division 2, or the Division had no end game. So it faltered.
Oh.
What do you mean it had no, like there's no ending?
No, there was an ending, but then after the ending it was just like, now what?
Well, like the Division, you should probably give some context. The Division was like that. It's like
It's one of those looter shooters.
Yeah, it's like kind of like Destiny.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
Without a good end game, what are you gonna do?
Play a new game?
Yeah.
I never get why people complain about like games having not the best end games, because for me, as soon as the credits roll, I'm done with the game. I don't touch it again. But I know that a lot of people like to 100% games and that kind of stuff. It's never been my thing.
Yeah, well, think about it like an MMO.
Mm-hmm.
Those looter shooters are, I
Are
mean,
building off of MMOs, yeah.
they insist that they're not MMOs, but they are 100% definitely MMOs.
Yes.
Absolutely, completely.
I think the
Like, I
main
remember
difference is that you're first
coming out,
person.
like, it's not an MMO. It's an MMO. Definitely MMO. And I think the Division is the same. I'm coming off my Destiny experience here, but I think the Division is the same.
Yeah, I can definitely say that it's extremely similar.
Where like, in an MMO, players have a certain expectation of like, oh, now that I've reached the highest stuff, now it's time to do the real, like the big difficult danger thing, right? Oh, there's this raid or I don't know, mission that's super hard that now I can do because I'm the max level. And I guess that's what people mean when there's no end game.
Yeah.
There's no content for someone who's just the top tier.
So maybe so Tyson was saying
that's not really story related here.
So Tyson was saying the beginning of the game needs to captivate you, which makes sense. If you don't care about it till like 3/4 of the game, well, self-explanatory. But from that discussion, it almost sounds like if the game isn't like, it's almost like the story and the game need to be cohesive enough that if you finish the story in the game, you can't just you don't want the player to just sit there and go, now what, because they finished the story and see no purpose in your game. And I almost feel like they should be interconnected to the point where you should never reach that point of now what do I do? There's no reason for being because I finished the story.
Yeah, well, I think that it goes like this, right? Is that some games are their story, right? Like Mass Effect or
Uncharted,
or I mean, even a game like the Halo single player, right? It's like you finish the game and finish the story, like it's the same thing. But then other games
with open worlds need an end game.
Yeah, exactly. A game with like an open world is a different story.
Mm-hmm.
I think another thing a game story has to have is that depending on how the game is built and how it's laid out, it has to have the pacing has to be different than some other kind of medium, because depending on how your game is laid out, the player might not get to the next like chunk of it,
right?
Until later. For example, right? It's like, okay, so another example, Chrono Trigger. So the game to Tyson's point, it has like a strong start because you go and you're at this. Oh, it's the Millennial Fair! Yay! Everyone's celebrating. Oh, let's go to this. Oh, look, my friend is showing off this weird teleportation machine she's created. Okay, here, person I've just met. Oh, she's going off and she has this weird, like necklace or whatever. And then because of the necklace, the machine, malfunctions and she vanishes. She doesn't get teleported to the other side of the teleporter.
Oh no.
And it's like, shit. And then you're like, okay, I'll go see what happened. So you grab the necklace that she dropped and you go into the teleporter with the necklace and it ends up, surprise, surprise, it's Chrono Trigger, sending you back in time. But it's like you kind of like this, it kind of draws you in with this mystery. Like, what's going on with this necklace? Like, where'd she go? What's going on here?
Right.
But then it's like you get plopped down and you're in the middle of like a RPG, wilderness, right? It's like, oh no, I need to get through this mountain and they keep getting attacked by monsters. And what Chrono Trigger does is that, oh shit, 1 second, I knocked something over. That's part of the mystery, right? It's like you're like, wait, I was just at like a festival and now I'm in the mountains somewhere and I'm being attacked by like gremlins. Like what's going on here?
Right. So the pacing, it needs what information is presented at what time and what happens, so quickly or so slowly has to cater to specifically the video game, whereas the player might not get to it like right away. But in a movie, it's like, hey, it's just going to happen. You have no control, but the player can actually say, I'm going to go through this door in 20 minutes or right now.
Yeah,
and the
exactly.
story still needs to work.
I'm going to just run around through this level endlessly, or am I just going to run right through the level and get to the next chunk? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And that can affect the game.
Some games that kind of running around, you spend so long at it that you forget what's happening in the story.
Yeah, exactly.
Also,
so that's
for like in Diablo
III.
3, in Diablo 3, me and my friends were playing it together. It was like 3 of us. And actually, it happened in Borderlands 2 as well. Both those games kind of are kind of big looter kind of games.
Yeah.
And you spend a lot of time just kind of killing creatures to get loot, and you're going looking at your loot, figuring out what's better, having fun with your friends while you do it. And then you get to a story part, and we're all like, "Wait, what's happening again?
Mm-hmm.
Who's this? What?" It was literally 3 hours ago that we had our last story thing because we just spent so long in that cavern, and now I have no idea what's happening. It's so both those games I really didn't enjoy. Actually, I never finished Diablo 3. And I found Borderlands 2 to be kind of a slog by the end because we were enjoying the game. We were having a fun time, but we had no idea what was happening in the story. We were completely lost.
So I think as we all know, the video game genre, video games as a thing haven't been around forever, haven't been around for very long, and boundaries are still being pushed, and developers are always figuring out what can and cannot be done, and is it well done or whatever, and the genre is constantly evolving, right? Whereas movies or books, I mean, they've been explored and they are set basically, right? We know how to make movies and whatnot, but video games are still always evolving, and I think that's part of it is, especially when you're doing a story, people are still figuring out what the best way to lay it out is, and I think part of maybe like in open worlds like what you're saying, Borderlands or Skyrim, I find myself, I'll play Skyrim, but unless you're playing the whole, whatever quest you're playing, whether it's a full storyline or a side quest, unless you play it all straight through real quick, in one session and you're paying attention, you'll forget, and it's and
Yeah,
and
there
then
was
you'll be
times
like,
in Skyrim
who
where
are
I was
you?
like,
What? I don't even care anymore, and you'll move on.
what was this quest line?
Exactly.
I didn't actually beat the main storyline for Skyrim for like 5 years.
Same here. Because I would
Because
just
I
get
would play
sidetracked.
play a bunch of the side missions, then never finish the main story, and then I'd play it and same thing, play a bunch of the side missions, and never finish the story. It took me 5 years to actually say, you know what, I should probably actually beat this game.
Same thing for me. And see, and for a story, for a game like Skyrim or Borderlands or something, where like I guess there's two sides of it. One, yes, it's a lot of fun. It's open world, so you allow the player to just explore and do whatever the heck they want. But these games also have a lot of work put into their stories and backstories and lore and stuff. So the fact that players can so easily just forget about it or get confused and not care anymore seems to be something that I don't know. Something needs to change maybe in the way we deliver that, but no one's figured out how to do it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's right. Like, yeah, definitely. Like, Skyrim's a good example of a game that has a story that they made, but really it has a story that you create, right? And it's the story that you create for, I think, a lot of players is a lot more interesting and exciting than whatever, like, oh, you gotta go save the thing from the. It's like, but I want to just kind of wander around and see what's what, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
But I think so. What? Yeah. So, guys, what are some games that you've played that have told stories in like an interesting way or like an unusual way?
I mean, do you want me to rant about KOTOR for another 20 minutes?
No. I'm not talking about having an unusual story. I'm not talking about like a story that has unusual twists and turns. I'm saying like an unusual method of storytelling.
Well, I mean, I guess the story is very basic, but way at the beginning is the original Legend of Zelda, which has like little to no story. It's basically, hey, you're playing as this dude, go explore the world.
Right.
So I mean, yes. So you could blame quote unquote that method or presentation of the story as the beginning of video games, really, and people are just figuring it out. But you don't see that very often.
I mean, Zelda
anymore.
has like a little prologue that explains what's going on.
True.
And also, people do talk in the world, although not really. They basically give you little hints where secrets are. But
yeah,
you're
but
right,
I mean, in terms of just the story, all you know really is that you're this guy, and you get a sword from an old dude, and then go fight a guy. Like it's super simple, but I don't know if that was. I think it's both a mixture of the beginning of video games and just how do you present a story in this new medium, and them doing it on purpose so that you, the player, are just are curious and go explore. But that's just an interesting way, because when you think about story games, you don't often think of, hey, just be. It's more what we've been talking about of Uncharted or Skyrim, where the story is laid out and you're this character and this is what you must do. You know?
Yeah, I think another example, which maybe takes it even further, is maybe not. Maybe it takes it less far in that direction, but also more far. I'll explain. Hyper Light Drifter is a game with not a single word of dialogue. Okay. Not a single word of explanation anywhere in the game. It is told, the story is told entirely through there's like an opening cutscene where something happens that is not really, you don't really understand what the heck is going on at the beginning. And all of the characters you encounter, they tell their own little stories through just pictures.
Okay.
And you're just, everything you're experiencing is like on this, there's no like words. Like, I think that like in general, if I may take a moment to talk about words for a moment, words are like, are like this divide between the idea of the thing, and the word is just like communicating to us that idea. So there's this kind of separation that we don't often think about between the idea and us, which is a word is in between there. And like Hyperlight Drifter kind of like sort of circumvents this by there's no words, there's no nothing, there's no talking, there's no dialogue. It's all just like symbols, and it's like, oh yes, you're looking at this image and you're trying to, each of the triangles gets filled up when you get to a different area and you complete the thing. It's like you're in your brain, you begin to like just sort of, you don't put words to those things. It's just in your brain. It's like, oh yes, the triangles, but you're not thinking about it in words. It's just like triangles. It's like, oh yes, you got the triangles. You got the little thingamabobs when you pick them up from enemies, and everything's just, the whole story of the game is just communicated through this, I don't know, like this wordlessness that's really interesting.
So I guess, and it gives the player a way to interpret it how they want.
Yeah, exactly.
So like, you know, in later Zelda games, you know, it's like, oh, Link,
Like
this is the Triforce. You must do this because you have the courage, whereas Ganon has the you know, and all that, and you're just being exposition, blah 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 blah, and this is what it is. Whereas it sounds like in Hyperlight Drifter, you know, that thing is like has a name and it is one thing, but the player as an individual can be like, can interpret that as their own thing, whatever they feel like it might be.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's almost like an open world, but in the story you to explore.
It is kind of an open world.
You know what I mean?
In a limited sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you guys say that Minecraft has a story?
I think to some extent.
Well,
yeah.
I think Minecraft, I don't know how it is anymore, but
it's always changing.
Yeah, when we used to play it when we were kids, you know, it's kind of like the Skyrim thing where you create your own story. However, in Skyrim, there's a bunch of people and stories and already there mixed in with whatever you want to do. Whereas Minecraft is literally you sitting there and you do anything you want. So you are creating your story. There's nothing.
I mean, there is a canon end game, and that's fighting the Ender Dragon.
Yeah, but that's like a thing that they added later.
Yeah, and to be fair, that's just a personal goal for you. You don't have to do it. It's just an option.
I think. For some reason, a lot of people, when they're thinking about story games, you don't think of Minecraft because like, oh, Minecraft doesn't have a story. They literally made Minecraft, what was it, story mode or adventure mode, like this story other game that has like a story, because people were always like joking, oh, Minecraft doesn't have a story, but
it does,
and it still doesn't.
I found that
Minecraft
some of my most like engaging moments in gaming was playing Skyrim the first few weeks, and just like the stories we were telling at school about what happened to us. And then that fateful day when, you know, you could play multiplayer and you could create a server and get into with each other and tell all these stories together. I think one of the biggest interesting things that will happen in games once we reach kind of that, you know, Ready Player One future where you're kind of fully in the game, is that it's just going to be just this like weird dreamlike otherworldly version of life where you're just interacting with things, and it's the interaction that creates the story and not necessarily
scripted
pre-made scripts and events and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What do you think? I think story games will always exist, but I think some of the more interesting stories of the future are going to be told without those things.
Yeah. I think games like Minecraft don't have a story. They have many stories.
Yes.
Like, they have like, I mean, yeah, just like the big chunk of any kind of open world game or anything like that, where there's a word for it, like an emergent narrative.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, I know there's a word for it. Yeah. Like system, it's all built around systems and.
Yeah. Anyways, there's a word for it, but the point is
emergent gameplay.
Anyway, where the story that you're just sort of doing something, right? You're like, you know what? I think I'm gonna go over that way. I mean, even Breath of the Wild, like Breath of the Wild is kind of the same kind of Skyrim thing where it has a story and it has cutscenes and stuff and a goal, but like the vast bulk of that game and the best parts of it probably are the parts where you're just kind of going. You're just like, which direction do you take? Oh, I choose to go this way and explore that thing. And you're just kind of having your own journey. Oh no, it's raining and you're out of food and you have to, you're trying to run away from this monster. And then you end up getting into this little thing and then this happens and then whatever, right? Like it's just sort of your adventures,
I think that's what.
That kind of,
Go ahead.
that's a kind of story that only video games. Oh, that's only games can give. You can't
Right.
have that kind of story in, a book or a movie or a TV show or something like that.
Yeah, because all that is the story. There's no way to deviate from it. And even in video games, the main storyline, you can follow it and there's no way to deviate from it. But there are things that can happen in between there that you, the player, had full control over, and you made it happen, and it happened because you decided to do something different. And I feel like something like Minecraft or Skyrim or something, oh yes, hey, Michael, I was playing Skyrim yesterday and I ran over to Riverwood, but when I turned the corner, there's a troll there and, he smashed my face and I had to, do things like that where unexpected things because you made a decision as opposed to a movie where, everyone knows the story. There is no difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think the distinction is like, like you can have, like for example, Uncharted. Like you can make a movie easily out of Uncharted, but you couldn't easily make a movie out of Minecraft.
They're doing it though.
They're gonna try.
Yeah,
Anything like Minecraft,
we'll see.
For both those.
Here's the thing. Whatever this Minecraft thing ends up being, like, it's not going to be the stories it's not going to be what makes Minecraft interesting, right? They might. Who knows what the heck it'll be? But
I think they'll probably be inspired by the Lego movie.
Yeah, maybe. The reason I know the Minecraft movie won't be anything like the real experience of playing Minecraft is because those stories, the experience of playing Minecraft, it's not like an outwardly interesting story. It's not like an exciting narrative necessarily. Not in the same way. Like it can be engaging, and it's like, oh man, I've discovered this underground, cave system, and I'm exploring. It's like, I wonder what I'm gonna find. Oh, I'm working on this. I'm making this decision. Oh no, this guy's here. Blah, blah. Right?
You don't reach the same emotional heights in emergent stories.
Yeah.
In games that, like, in normal everyday life, it's rare that something epic happens or where some great trial reaches a great conclusion that's great for that worked out perfectly. Life is kind of just happening, and you pull together stories in it, and in Minecraft it's the same way. Minecraft is a lot like life in that way, but and that's why people like stories so much, is that it pulls you out. It's escapism. It's telling you a version of reality where everything works in this heightened way where emotions are more powerful. You have music that kind of builds on it, and you have these villains and that kind of stuff. So I think we can praise Minecraft a lot, but I think the story games will always have a place. Just like movies will always have a place, and books will.
Here's the thing. It's undeniable. We spent a bunch of time kind of ragging a little, not really ragging, but kind of really praising emergent stuff and kind of, I guess, by, kind of implying that normal story games aren't as good. But the fact of the matter is that story games like Uncharted or like Mass Effect or those kinds of things where yes, you could take all of like the cutscenes and stuff and turn it into some kind of movie. But the story, like the game of it, when you're actually playing the character and you're actually like physically controlling them and doing stuff, you feel connected to that character in a whole different way. And that's another thing that video games do.
Josh just brought that up in the chat. He said it's called ludo narrative, using the experience of the player to give a greater impact to the story that other media can't convey.
Yeah. Bam.
Yeah. It's true.
Oh, the
on Twitch probably.
Twitch chat.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, do you ever feel like sometimes in a book, because you're even though you're not controlling the story, but you are controlling the pace almost. You are actively reading the book. Sometimes the emotions are more intense than a movie.
I think so.
I don't read much, so
if you're really in the zone for the book, yeah.
So I feel like with games, it's a more intense version of that kind of feeling of reading because you're actually in control. And sometimes the story is already set. What's going to happen is going to happen, but you are the one that pushes that character to that point, and that can be very emotionally gratifying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The only thing I read is documentation, and that just frustrates me. So
I think that books do have, like, books are also very different. That's this one. I don't know if we're here to talk about books, but books are also have something different about them than movies.
You know what we should do? We should
books.
Let's create Books 2.0. All right, here's how Books 2.0 works. You read, and we create a new piece of hardware that tracks your eyes, and it tells where you are on the page, and then it changes the music and the score.
Whoa.
And like the ambience and stuff like that, like all the sound experience based on where you are in the book.
But
and lights too, with smart lights.
And lights, yeah.
Oh my god,
dude.
But here's the thing with books, right? Is that you don't necessarily, like, I don't know about other people, but I don't necessarily, like, if I'm reading, I don't necessarily just like go through it, just kind of read through it. Sometimes I'll be like, wait, did I miss something? And I'll kind of check, like, jump back, and I'll like look at it.
Yeah,
and
that's why we use this like
So like the lights would be constant, like music and stuff would be constantly changing as my eyes whipped around the page.
I think this is going to be the product that gets SkyPyre into the stratosphere. What are we going to call it? We're going to call it the
Book 2.0.
Books 2.0. Yeah.
Books 2.0.
Oh my god.
Man, guys, the big thing is like everyone
now
it's going to be flying off the shelves.
We'll just have to hire composers who can write 28 hours worth of music.
Oh,
Michael, you haven't read Lord of the Rings until you've read it in Books 2.0.
Yeah.
Coming this fall.
I could smell the Hobbit's feet.
You heard it here, folks. Oh my god.
If I can bring us slightly back onto
please do,
because I've been sitting on this thought for a while. One of the things that I can't believe I'm going to say this, I have to give EA credit for, is they found a way to implement a story into a sport game. And they did it surprisingly well.
Are you talking about the FIFA games?
Yeah.
Recent FIFA games?
The recent FIFA games have a story mode in it called The Journey, where you play as this soccer player named Alex Hunter, and you kind of you follow his story as he, plays professional soccer in like the Champions League or UEFA, or I don't know soccer that well, so I'm probably butchering this, but basically, like, it's a concept that you would not put together. Like, you got a sport game where you play soccer or hockey or football or whatever, and you're playing the sport. You're like, you play as your favorite team, you try to beat your least favorite team. Maybe, like, they kind of have like a subtle story mode in like Be a Pro, where you can kind of create your own player and stuff. But The Journey is like, I really have to give EA credit for it, because they were just like, let's just try it and see what happens, and it succeeded very well.
How does it work? Like, it's my understanding that those games, it's like you're controlling, like you're jumping from player to player, and you have
the
a
way
more
that
zoomed out perspective. How's this work?
The way that the journey works is you are playing the protagonist character, Alex Hunter, and actually in the more recent games you play as 3 protagonists that are all intertwined in the same story, which is pretty cool.
Just explain the story.
Are they playing on the same team?
No, they all play on different teams.
But
they're like, so you start off playing as Alex Hunter, and you meet like his best friend that you can later play as, and then you meet his sister in a future game that you can play as in the third game.
What is it like? Are you seeing cutscenes? Like, how does it?
So yeah, you get cutscenes that present like most of the story, and then there are certain choices you can make based on the personality that you want the character to have. So for Alex Hunter, you can have either a cool personality where he's like calm and collected and humble, or you can get like a fiery personality where he's like really arrogant and like, you know, kind of like more of a people, like a fan showy kind of person. Where if you play as a cool, you get more respect from like your team and your managers and stuff, but less fans like you. Like, you still have fans that like you, but not as much. Whereas if you're like a fiery personality, you get more fans, but your managers tend to not like you as much, because, you know, you go on media and say like, you know, dumb shit like, oh, we wouldn't have won the game if it weren't for me, stuff like that, right? It's not really like being a team player.
Right.
So you can make that choice based on how you want to play, and based on where you are and like what choices you make, it triggers certain cutscenes and stuff. But then to actually play the game, you go through certain events. Like, you play actual soccer games, right? So, you know, if you're playing for Manchester United, you know, you play through a Manchester United season as Alex Hunter and try to win whatever cup they get in that league. I can't remember. So it's the kind of concept where you don't expect the two things to merge well, and they somehow found a way to do it, where you get an actually really good investing story where you actually kind of care about this character and what happens to him, even though, you know, you're just playing soccer. So it's something that I really have to give EA kudos for. It's like one of the only things I can give EA kudos for. But the fact that they were able to put a story into a sports game is something that I don't think I could have ever fathomed as a child. Because I've played NHL like every year since I could hold a controller. So, like, if I went back to like 6 or 7 year old me and was like, hey, what if there was a game that had like a sports game that had a really good story? Actually, this is a bad example because 6-year-old me wouldn't give a shit, but you know what I mean.
I think for me, I never got into sports games because there wasn't a story, or at least not one I cared about.
Mm-hmm. I never got into sports games because I was like, what? Who cares about sports?
You know what? Is there any volleyball games? I'd play a volleyball game.
Probably maybe, is.
There's lots of beach volleyball games.
That's true. I'd like a VR volleyball game.
The video game development universe is mostly male dominated in history. So, you know, beach volleyball games with chicks in bikinis. Of course, it's going to exist.
Oh yeah, what's that one game called? I don't know. I do like. I do want to play the skate games. You know, Skate 1, 2, and 3. Those have story and stuff, so I want to play that someday. Yeah, and I will because the RPCS3. It's like a PlayStation 3 emulator. They've almost perfectly emulated the skate games now, and so I'll probably play them in like Super HD soon. Do they have a story? I don't know. Find out next time on.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us on this edition of In No Particular Order. This was very interesting to hear everyone's perspectives on storytelling and what makes a good game, what was their favorite games and favorite characters. Everyone in chat, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next month.
See ya.